If you haven't heard, the Middle-earth series that Amazon is dropping an unbelievable amount of money to produce is called The Rings of Power. Its first trailer came out a few weeks ago, and it was met with a sizable negative response. In fact, most of the positive reactions that I have encountered essentially amounted to saying, "Looks cool. Let's see how it turns out." Not exactly a groundswell of fan hype. And speaking of fans, I am one. The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion are annual reads for me, and the Lord of the Rings films are quite easily my favorite movies of all time. I even named my eldest daughter Éowyn. While I know that there are plenty of Tolkien lovers that easily surpass my knowledge and affection for all things Middle-earth, I believe that my fandom credentials are sufficient for discussing at least a few concerns that I have with the Amazon series. More importantly, however, as both a Christian and a pastor, I long to know and love the scriptures more and help others to do the same. And so, while the concerns that I have about the Rings of Power are nothing that countless other Tolkien fans have said, I do believe that this topic can lead us into a valuable conversation about God's good designs and how our secular society falls short of them. Now, to begin, let me give a brief explanation about where in Tolkien's lore this new series will take place and why that is important. So Middle-earth's history is marked by 3 ages, and the series will be set in the Second Age. So to put things in context, the events of The Lord of the Rings end the Third Age and usher in the Fourth Age with the final defeat of Sauron, the Dark Lord, right? The First Age is recounted in the Silmarillion, and it is largely focused upon the elves' long war against Sauron's master, a guy named Melkor, who is essentially Tolkien's version of Satan. Now, at the end of the First Age, Melkor was defeated and imprisoned by a vast army of Valar, think archangels in Tolkien's Legendarium, and then elves and men. And as a reward to the men who fought alongside them, the Valar created an island between their land, which is called Valinor, and Middle-earth. So upon this island paradise called Númenor, these men were also given extended lifespans, each of them living for several centuries, right? So the Amazon series is set during the Second Age, and it will depict the downfall of that island kingdom of Númenor. To be honest, I think that was a great choice. Tolkien wrote the least about the Second Age, so that gives the creators a bit more room to go their own route. But I most love the potential that the story of Númenor has to reflect upon our own secular age. So you see, over the millennia on the island, the people of Númenor essentially grew into the greatest kingdom that Middle-earth had ever seen. Toward the end of the Second Age, Sauron rose to power and began to conquer Middle-earth. Yet, when the Númenorians brought their fleet of ships to the coast of Middle-earth, Sauron surrendered himself without a battle, and the Silmarillion says, "For he perceived that the power and the majesty of the kings of the sea surpassed all rumor of them, so that he could not even trust the greatest of his servants to withstand them." So, not even the Dark Lord could stand against the might of the Númenorians. But their downfall was not external, but internal. So for all of their unsurpassed might and glory, the Númenorians were still mortal. And even centuries of life did not dull the sting of death. In The Two Towers, Faramir gave a fitting description to Frodo and Sam of the Númenorians as he compared the kings of Gondor to them. And the kings of Gondor were the descendants of Númenor, right? So he says, "Death was ever present, because the Númenorians still, as they had in their old kingdom, and so lost it, hungered after endless life unchanging. Kings made tombs more splendid than the houses of the living, and counted old names in the rolls of their descent dearer than the names of their sons. Childless lords sat in aged halls, musing on heraldry. In secret chambers withered men compounded strong elixirs, or in high cold towers asked questions of the stars. And the last king of the line of Anarion had no heir. So, in a sense, the tale of Numenor is the story of a semi-utopian society collapsing in on itself. In their desperation for immortality, they gave themselves to making strong elixirs and studying the stars, hoping to prolong their existence through chemistry and astrology rather than strengthening the next generation. This is precisely where a Second Age tale would have the ability to hold out a mirror to our present day in a way that only stories are able to do. You see, for the past several decades, the West has been in a place rather like Numenor. Now, of course, we don't have lifespans that last centuries long, and disease, crime, and accidental deaths continue onward, but even so, the period of time from the conclusion of World War II to the present has been a good deal more utopic than most of us realize. And if that sounds strange, just imagine the reaction that one of our ancestors from, say, the 1700s would have to being told that here in the 21st century, obesity would be a greater health risk than starvation. To those of the past who knew that scarcity could easily be lurking behind seasons of abundance, such a fact would have seemed as impossible as space travel. And the abundance of food is only one of the many staples of modernity for which we ought to rejoice. Indeed, we could add to that list air conditioning and heating, automobiles, airplanes, refrigeration, indoor plumbing, antibiotics, vaccines, and the list can go on. All of these things have become so ingrained in our daily lives that we almost never pause to remind ourselves that most of these things were not invented, not discovered, or at least not affordable only 150 years ago. Add to this the relative global peace, at least between world powers, and nearly anyone from any other time in human history would have likely considered the past several decades in the West to be as close to utopia as any society has ever achieved. Yet, in our comfort and ease, we began to cast off all restraint. Just as the Numenorians sought to liberate themselves from the shackles of mortality, even though in Tolkien's lore death was a mysterious gift to man, enabling them to be unchained from the world, we too have strained to liberate ourselves from our creaturely limitations. Specifically, three core distinctions that are rooted in the very opening chapter of the Bible, distinctions which likewise are gifts to us. First, we sought to erase the creator-creature distinction by denying God's existence and worshiping ourselves instead. Second, we also erased the human-animal distinction by declaring man to be nothing more than a highly evolved animal. Finally, we have presently been attempting to erase the male-female distinction by severing the concept of gender from the reality of biology. You see, like the Numenorians, as well as the Gondorians after them, this preoccupation with making ourselves great has resulted in a rapid decline of birth rates. We too are becoming childless as we focus not upon building a world for the coming generations, as well as actually giving birth to the coming generations, but upon making the most of our relatively brief lifespans. Indeed, the core of the matter is the same. We too are wrestling against the sting of death, grasping at immortality. But while the Numenorians built a fleet of warships to assail the gods, we throw divine revelation to the ground and declare that we will live our own truth. Oh sure, Tolkien was writing fantasy. But his writings resonate with us only because they express real-world truths beneath their imaginary settings. Now, while I will be overjoyed to be proven wrong, it does not appear that the producers of the Amazon series understand the heart behind the story of the fall of the Numenorians. Two statements from a recent Vanity Fair article giving us a first look and with an interview with the showrunners give me a few of these reasons for my concern. So first, we have this paragraph, quote, "In the novels, the aforementioned things take place over 1,000 years, but Payne and McKay, who are the showrunners of this series, have compressed events into a single point in time. It is their biggest deviation from the text, and they know that it's a big swing. We talked with the Tolkien estate," says Payne. "If you are true to the exact letter of the law, you are going to be telling a story in which your human characters are dying off every season because you're jumping 200 years in time. And then you're not meeting really big, important canon characters until season 4. Look, there might be some fans who want us to do a documentary of Middle-earth, but we are going to tell one story that unites all these things." End quote. Okay, I completely understand that the showrunner's reasoning here. It would certainly be difficult to make a series that spanned thousands of years with human characters constantly dying off and needing to adjust the setting to show the passing of time, right? But that is the story that they accepted the task of telling. They dismiss Tolkien's timeline by noting that they're not making a Middle-earth documentary. And now, although I might actually find such a documentary interesting, the problem here goes deeper than simply staying true to the exact dates of Tolkien's Legendarium, right? Without the generation after generation of long-lived Númenóreans dying, how will the series properly convince us of the desperate hunger that the Númenóreans had for immortality, which led to their destruction? Second, we have this paragraph. It says, quote, "Amazon series will also broaden the notion of who shares the world of Middle-earth. One original storyline centers on a Sylvan elf named Arondir, played by Ishmael Cruz Cordova, who will be the first person of color to play an elf on screen in Tolkien's project. He is involved in a forbidden relationship with Bronwyn, a human village healer played by Nazanin Bonadai, I'm going to butcher these names, a British actor of Iranian heritage. Elsewhere, in a Brit of Jamaican descent, Sir Lenny Henry plays a Harfoot elder, and Sophia Nomvetit has a scene-stealing role as a dwarven princess named Disa, the latter being the first black woman to play an elf in a Lord of the Rings movie, as well as the first female dwarf. It only felt natural to us that an adaptation of Tolkien's world would reflect what the world actually looks like, says Lindsay Weber, the executive producer of the series. Tolkien is for everyone. His stories are about his fictional races doing their best work when they leave the isolation of their own cultures and come together. End quote. So my concern here is not so much that the showrunners are bringing more diversity to Middle-earth as why they are attempting to do so. So again, they say it felt only natural to us that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world is actually like. Tolkien is for everyone. They seem to believe that Tolkien's writings only reflect what the world is actually like and are for everyone as long as they have the proper ratio of skin tones on screen. This indicates to me that their understanding of both Tolkien and what the world is actually like are both skin deep. They seem to hold to the current Hollywood dogma that people can only resonate with the characters that look most like them. But Frodo and Sam are not beloved characters because of the massive population of short, curly-haired, large-footed white men that identify with them. Instead, the journey of Frodo and Sam is enduring because they're a story of companionship, striving through and triumphing over hardship and evil. And likewise, the story of Éowyn is not merely for equestrian-loving, blonde-haired white women, but rather it's for all who have ever yearned for the glory of doing something great while feeling trapped by the ordinary. They can all see themselves in her. You see, stories work by speaking to us at heart level, illustrating deep truths that we all know to be true. Through the story of Numenor, Tolkien probed at mankind's yearning for eternity, the lengths to which we will go to defy divinely established limitations, and the destruction that inevitably follows. Such a tale is a fitting parable for our secular age, although I doubt that the creators are self-aware enough to see it.
Thank you for listening to the BC Newton podcast. For more rooted theology for the unwithered church, please visit bcnewton.co. And until next time, grace and peace.